Well, welcome to another session. I hope you are well. I want to talk about denial in our lifestyles. In the session I did previously, or 2 sessions ago, I made reference to um, the fact that I had, in hindsight, I had a lifestyle that had some form of addiction to it. It was purely based on what I ate, it was in my diet. I was addicted to sugars. Most of us in the West are addicted to sugars and carbohydrates. That plays a role. If you have too much or too little of a sugar spike, you have fatigue. They work in the same way. When people have fatigue, there's a sense that something is wrong, and therefore people start to think in ways that are not of what we would call of good reporting about themselves. We start to worry, we start to panic, we start to have doubts. That creates anxiety. Anxiety is suppressed, it leads to a form of depression at the psychological level before it becomes manifested at the physical level. Um, we're all addicted to something. Um, but addicts, like myself, as I used to be, always developed a rationale, an excuse, a way of saying, well, um, I'm not an addict for X, Y, Z reasons. Now, I can look back over the past 20 years and I can say, oh, yes, if I were to look at my lifestyle, the outcomes, and the what I consumed, I would say, yes, you had a level of addiction because there were certain things that you couldn't live without. It became a lifestyle based on habits and based on your preferences and your tastes. And in that was an addiction. But if you develop a rationale, which most people do, which I did, initially looking back, until I realized that if I juxtaposed the life I live now and the life I lived before, I could see that there was some level of some of my choices prior were not made by will, awareness, but they were simply made habitually. Addicts develop a rationale for their feats, generally speaking. And here is the key thing in today's session. Should you find yourself explaining as to why something such as an addiction you have is not an addiction, then it means that there's a high likelihood that you are addicted to that thing. For example, some people say, well, I'm not addicted to carbohydrates and I'm not addicted to sugar. Well, the fact that you're defending that position without introspection and reflection and thoughtful analysis will suggest that it's a knee-jerk reaction. The likelihood is that you are addicted to that thing. Now, I've had, as I have done in my own particular instance in my own life, I've had a lot of common rationales that I've used. As I started to study alternative ways of good health, I had to first of all critique and look through the life that I was leading and the lifestyle that I had. And in doing the critique, I had to come to the position of saying, well, am I doing something wrong? In order to make a change, is there something wrong that I am doing? And I identified a number of pitfalls, rationales. One of which is one most people have, which is I'm eating a balanced diet, and I'm eating a diet recommended by my physician, my doctor, my nutritionist, or my mentor, my consultant. I am eating a balanced diet according to the NHS. I'm following the pyramid. I'm following what we've been told is the right way to eat. Second rationale, I'm eating the way I've always eaten. This is how my parents ate. Although in my case it wasn't the same. I was eating the way I was based on a Western influence. But we would normally say things such as, I've always eaten like this. This is how we've always eaten. We eat this, we eat that, we eat that. And look at my brother, look at my sister. They're all healthy and they're all well. What's the problem? I'm not sick. I haven't been to the hospital for 15, 20 years. I've always eaten like this, so it must be fine. Some other people, myself included, would say things such as, I just don't have the time. I don't have time to prep meals. Although I would say that I found the prepping of meals to be something that I accepted many, many years ago, it wasn't because I wanted to eat well. It was purely because I worked very long hours and I found it to be much more affordable to prep the meals and eat and take a meal to work rather than buy food from the outside. Most people find it more convenient. And so some people would say, well, I don't have the time to prep the meal. So during lunch, I have to eat something, and I have to eat what is available around my working environment. I don't have the plethora of choices. I can't walk into this restaurant and wait for a well cooked meal because I don't have the time. I used to have excuses, and some people do, which rationales to say, I don't see the need to change. I look good, I'm healthy, I train hard, I haven't been ill for a number of years, and so I don't see what the need to change is. Um, some other people will say, well, I'm already on a diet. Some people will say, well, um, I have a lifestyle with regards to how I eat. I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a flexitarian, I'm a this, I'm a that. I'm on Atkins diet, I'm on this diet. And that is not the point being made. The point being made is there an addiction based on what you consume, based on the life you live, or a lifestyle choice that is addictive, that is creating a false sense of energy that in the short term seems as though you're doing things right, but in the long term risks putting you in a state whereby physically, mentally, and psychologically, and even emotionally, you find yourself to be in a deficit. Some other people would say, when I speak to parents, people who have children, and they say, no, this is what we make for our family. Our family, we eat this together. If we were to change, then we would not have regular dinners, a quality time of sharing. So, it would just cause and create a lot of arguments amongst the family. They enjoy having their chips, they enjoy having their carbs, they enjoy having their chip butty, they enjoy having their deep fried Mars bar, whatever it might be. We spend time together, so it's this time of sharing, therefore, it's justified. Some other people even say, as was my case before I came to this new way of actually looking after myself, I would say, well, I've never tried it before. Or I find the whole thing to be skeptical. In today's session, therefore, think about how you've been rationalizing the position you have and the lifestyle you have. As I move forward, let me talk about something which is called, if you think about the way the human body works, is that the human body needs energy. The energy has to be converted in whatever form it comes in. It has to be used as a working fluid, to use the word fluid to represent, used as the ingredient to kickstart and make all the various parts of the body function as they should. As we use such working fluids, we burn energy, we spend energy, and we waste energy. Understanding the various parts of the body and how each part functions is key. And understanding how much energy you should be consuming, how much energy you can conserve based on how much you spend, more importantly, how much you have left, is also very key. For most people, we are fatigued. The West is generally fatigued. The West is recording the highest levels of depression. The level of fatigue and depression and anxiety seems to be widespread across all age groups. As a matter of fact, the data suggests that young people as young as 7 and 8 are fatigued, anxious, have a feeling of depression at that young age. At 7 or 8, this is when you should have so much energy that you need to be contained. We find when I was much younger, fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers couldn't keep up with their young children at 8 and 9 because they had all this energy, and sometimes mum would have to say, well, why don't you go out and play with your friends? Let him play for a few hours because that would drain some of the energy he has so he can sleep. These days, young children cannot keep up with their mothers or their grandparents. Part of that reason is partly because of a lifestyle choice, mostly fueled by what we eat, our diet, what we take in, and our lifestyles, what we consume. And if we can control, and if we can do our best to understand how the body functions, we can then understand how what we might be giving the body, believing it to be food, is creating an addiction, but more importantly, operates as poison in our bodies and therefore affects us in the long term. So I'll end today's session by simply saying it's necessary that you start to think about what you're having. You know, there's a saying, you are what you eat, and the body keeps the score. And if you think about a game, we've got 85 years, depending on where you are, as a life expectancy in the West. Certainly women, men, slightly less, 5 or 6 years less. But if you think about the life expectancy, and you also agree with the whole idea that you only get one body, there's no replacement, one body. Yes, you might do enhancements to the same body, but you get one. How would you look after that body to ensure the body operates in the most efficient way, in the most pragmatic, life-sustaining and long-term perspective in mind? You would think about this. If I came to you and I said, this is a car, you're only going to have one car in your entire life. You get to choose. But if you choose a car, you don't get to change that car until you die. Whatever car you would choose to your preference, one of the things I would hope you would do would be to sit down and say, fine, this car was built in a certain manner. It was built by a manufacturer. The manufacturer has a manual that explains how the car's several functions are supposed to be used, but also how the various parts of the car are supposed to be maintained and looked after, sometimes even replaced. I would hope that you would actually sit down, pick up the manual and study the manual so that you understand what the car needs. Human beings, for example, I drink water. But if I was going to drive my car and I drove it to the petrol station and I say, well, I do not drink diesel and I do not drink petrol, and therefore I will not give my car the fuel that it needs, despite it being designed to run on safe fuel, particularly in this case, let's say petrol. But I would give the car what I enjoy, which is water. If I were to pour water into the fuel tank, I would have a serious problem. Why? Because the car is not designed to use water as a working fluid with regards to fuel. I have to give the car what it needs. And that knowledge is not something you just acquire by osmosis, despite it being possible. But in order for the car to function properly, you have to read the manual. Now, in my example, there have been times when I've had issues with cars that I have had. And I have to admit, you buy a car and you seldom read the manual. The same way you buy a laptop or you buy a phone, you don't sit down reading the manual. It's only when something goes wrong that you run back to the manual and say, well, something doesn't feel right. Some of us, rather than go back to the manual, will go straight to a specialist. We'll go to a dealer who we bought the car from, or we go to a repair mechanic and we say, the car is misfiring, something doesn't seem right. The mechanic or the dealer, they've studied the manuals. So as soon as you describe what the issue is, they know where to look. They start with a full diagnosis. They start with a hypothesis. And they work through to get to what they think the real diagnosis really is. The reason they can do that is because they've studied the manuals regularly, and so they know where to look and what to look out for. Similarly, we have a body, but what is fascinating is we have not been given a manual. What that means is that we have to find ways through study, by being curious, by being inquisitive, by being open, to listen to contrary views and have competing ideas and look for the best fit line across those ideas and see how they intersect, and then choose a lifestyle that favors you. I'll say this as I close. The motivation to change things when you believe that things are working in your way and in your favor is usually very low. The motivation to change things when you are not satisfied, or when you are unhappy, or when you are dissatisfied with the way things are, the status quo, is usually much higher. So the one thing I cannot give you is desire, the desire to change. We learn in two ways. We learn from the pain of losing or the joy of winning. Unfortunately, pain is a greater motivator than joy. So in our lives, generally speaking, the younger we are, the more forgiving our bodies really are. And even the more we have addictions at the younger age, the less impact it has on our well-being, all things remaining equal, because we are younger. We can absorb, the body can take so much of a, you might say, a beating. The metabolic syndromes are there. But the younger you are, the more the body is forgiving, because it's like a brand new car. You buy a brand new car, you drive it really roughly, and it still functions well. You buy an older car that has been used for a number of years, and it's not as forgiving. So as we get older, we have to start moving away from what's the conventional approach, laissez-faire approach, and we start moving into a much more selective and intelligent approach in dealing with symptoms that come our way. I hope today's session has been useful.